Morning, Coach. Thanks for a couple of minutes.
Yes, sir.
We will start with Greg Barnes.
Hey, Phil, good morning. Just chatted with Mac a little bit about the center position. He had said after the game Saturday night that essentially there was a tryout last week where a lot of different guys took snaps. Can you kind of detail what the goal was there and how you're trying to address those issues at center?
Well, we're trying to address them by finding somebody that can play consistent football there. And I think, Q was playing hurt for a little while. He felt good this week. We, gave him the bulk of the reps. He did a good job. We're working through Brian and trying to get him back to 100%. And I think we had decided that, we like the efforts and the ability that Caden Baker has. And so he's a newer guy to that center front, but we're going to continue developing him at that position along with his spot at offensive tackle.
And I know Jonathan Adorno took some snaps at center last year. Is he still working at center or is he strictly at guard now?
No, he's been relatively focused on the guard position. I think the three that I named are the ones that we rep the most at center right now.
Okay, thank you.
Aaron Beard, go ahead.
Hey, Phil, I know quarterbacks get all the attention, blame and praise both ways. Has it been a difficult thing in terms of evaluating Sam's play with, the Lions had issues, you've got young receivers running, but there's been a lot of variables that are going into this. Does that make it more challenging to evaluate how Sam's playing?
Well, I think at the end of the day, whether you have a great team around you or a terrible team around you, and I'm not saying we do, but whether and whether or not a play goes really well on a particular down or really poorly on a particular down, at the end of the day, the quarterback's job is the quarterback's job. So from a grading him out standpoint, he's either doing something to help the play or he's not. There is one key component maybe to grading a quarterback that's different than the other positions. And, we call it damage control. You're going to touch the football every down. Every single down is not going to be positive, no matter how good you are. And so a big part of the quarterback's job is DM. It's damage control on plays that if we're athletic enough to get out of the box and make a play on the run, great. If we're athletic enough to scramble and go create some positive yardage, terrific. Sometimes the best result on a play is putting the ball into the dirt and getting the incomplete. Second down and 10 is a heck of a lot better than second 17. I give you a great example. 2 weeks ago, DJ Jones was on a swing route. He was covered by a backer, but the backer was floating and he's about 8 yards away. And Sam got some pressure and it could have potentially been a sack, and he flicked it out there for the swing, and DJ made a guy miss and went 11 yards. We got a first down. Had he been tackled at the line of scrimmage, that play is still better than us losing 6 or 7 in a sack. That's a damage control situation in which he did a really good job. And so we're getting better at those. I don't think, Aaron, we're used to being in that situation as much as we have been. But it's still a necessary evil, and we've got to be good at it when that's the only situation that arises. And from a staff standpoint, we want to try to call some things and do some things offensively that keep Sam out of those situations. So between his damage control and our game plan, and you try to minimize those situations.
Thank you much.
Yes, sir.
Andrew Jones, go ahead.
Hey, Coach, was last week the first week that Caden Baker took reps in practice at center? And how did you break that down with him working at tackle and center? And also, how did he grade out in the game Saturday?
For a first time ever playing center, he did a pretty good job. He had some plays I know he'd want back. Did a good job snapping. And yes, last week. Now, at some point, all of our linemen have snapped. We've taken a look at all of them at some point. A bunch of them will snap around in the summertime, and just so it's not a foreign deal if they haven't done it in high school. But from a play-to-play assignment, alignment, run the offense, all that stuff, this was Caden Baker's first look at center, with one of the first 2 teams on offense.
Kamari Morales has been a weapon for you guys. He scored, I think, in the last 3 games or 3 of the last 4. Is that just a product of him being open to those situations, or is there something he gives you that makes him a really good target when you guys are close to the end zone?
And who's that you're talking about? I missed the name.
Kamari
Oh,
Morales.
Kamari, yeah. Well, what Kamari does at his position, on paper, he's not as long as you want a tight end sometimes. That's what people think. But Kamari's so dang athletic, and he's developed his body, and he's bigger and he's physical. So we can put him in a goal line situation now, and he can get it done physically. That wasn't necessarily the case when he first got here. He was lighter, he wasn't nearly as strong, and thanks to Hess Company and his work ethic, he's really physically developed himself. So you can get him in there without everybody thinking we're going to throw to him all the time. And so he's been able to handle the physical aspect of it, Andrew. And now the athletic part, we're taking advantage of it because he can make you miss. I mean, he's got some moves, and he's athletic, and he can change direction, and he does a good job catching the football. And so we're going to try to drain as much out of him as we can down in that area.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Ross Martin.
Hey, Coach Longo. Coach
Ross.
Brown just said that we are a completely different offense, totally different offense than last year. I was wondering what has stood out to you as the adjustments that you've had to make to compensate or change for the differences in the offense and how it runs and the personnel this season compared to last season now with 5 games in.
So I would say, Ross, even when we were running hot last year and went 3 games without punting, and we had a lot of fun scoring points and doing those type of things, but even when you're playing offensively at a high level like that, you still need to pay attention to the little things. But when you're in a situation this year where we're not as explosive right now, and and I tell our players, if you can be as explosive as the guys last year, then show us, don't tell us. And it's not like they talk a big game, but if you can produce like that, then produce. Because if you can produce like that, we're gonna get you football. Until that happens, until somebody establishes themselves, maybe the way Diami did or one of our running backs did last year, it makes all of those little things that much more important. It makes every step, every footwork, every hand placement up front that much more important because maybe you don't have the same eraser behind it. It makes every single release, how we use our hands, how we utilize our feet, the route technique that we use, and all that stuff is that much more important when you don't just have the physical capabilities to go smoke somebody on a fade. And we're talented enough here to do the things that we want to do, but the focus is different. I mean, every year your strengths and your weaknesses are different. And so we're focusing in on, we're running Sam Howell a little bit more. We're focusing the ball in on Josh Downs a little bit more. We're doing some different things with the running backs because they do some things well. They're different than the guys we had last year. The tight end is a much bigger component of our system this year because we're a little bit deeper there now. We're more athletic. And I think we trust that room. So those are really the biggest differences right now between last year and this year. And I think for us to play more consistent is going to be the most important thing for us moving forward.
And quickly, I asked this to Coach Brown as well. The offensive line, I mean, it's up and down with the run game, probably not where you want it to be, and giving up 5 more sacks on Saturday against Duke. When you look at tape of the offensive line, and what stands out as the issue? I know we mentioned the center position. So what else is kind of, you think, plaguing the offensive line at this point?
It's 3 things. 1, it's continuity at center. 2, I think we need to play across the line of scrimmage. We got to do a better job of coming off the ball and not playing so laterally, playing vertically and getting downhill and getting into people. Those. And then the last thing is what I alluded to earlier is we've got to be consistent. And that's true through the whole team. But you're asking me about the O-line. We need to be more consistent up front with regards to our assignments and our footwork and our technique. It's not reinventing the wheel here. We could add 4 more run plays and run so many more a game, but it would still come down to how well you're going to physically technique it. Now, can we do some things on the skill end and schematically to try to help them? Absolutely. We want to get as few people in the box as possible. We want to create some indecision so that we can get up the field and get into people at the second level. But at the end of the day, it's going to be those 3 things. We have to have continuity at the center. We've got to be more consistent. And I think we have to be more fundamentally sound.
Over to Gregory Hall.
Hey, Phil. 8 targets to Emery Simmons, Antoine Green, and Chaffee Brown on Saturday to 2 completions. Just what's going on with those 3 guys? And you mentioned with the offense, someone needing to step up. How can they do that? Is it just an issue of not getting separation, the pressure on Sam causing inaccurate throws? Just what are you seeing with those outside receivers right now?
It's a little of all that. It's a cumulative deal. This is a team deal right now, but and again, you're asking me about the receivers now. So I'm going to say this: they have some strengths. We need to play to the strengths a little bit more, and we need to do some things schematically to help. If we have a guy that doesn't release well, we got to do some things to help him get off the ball. If we have a guy that really does a good job on in cuts and can separate, and we need to focus those routes and those in cuts to that cat. If we have a vertical guy, then we're going to have to scheme it a little bit more specifically from a personnel standpoint to try to cater to their strengths and not what they're not doing well right now. And so the game plan as we move forward here is going to become much more specific to personnel. And we're going to do some things schematically to help those guys with weaknesses that we have or that where we're not effectively executing from a technique standpoint.
Up until this point, would you say that you were kind of just, I don't know if relying, but doing kind of the same things that Diami and Dad are doing last year, assuming or thinking these guys could do those same routes and those levels, but just haven't been able to so far?
Well, I think we knew in spring ball and we knew in camp, based on the way we executed in practice, that we have different strengths and weaknesses. So you'll see some of those same plays out here. Our guys have executed some of them. I don't call them as often because they don't play to our strengths. So we've been running some different things and doing some different things with those guys to try to promote what they do well. And I think the next step for us is to completely personnel plays to guys that are excelling in certain areas. So we have a guy that's not well-rounded, Greg, at everything. Diami and Daz developed themselves to a point where they could do anything we asked them to do at receiver. And Josh Downs has done that this year. And so with them, it doesn't matter. I'm not concerned about what I'm calling because they have proven and earned the right to be able to do all of that stuff because they can. And that's no knock on the rest of the guys. And they're developing. But while they're developing and while they're improving some of the weaknesses, we're going to cater plays to the strengths that they have, whether it be catching or running routes or blocking, just to promote more success on their end because we need more first down efficiency, and that's the way to get it done.
Appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
All right, last one for Coach Luciano. Go ahead.
Hey, Coach, this was the first game of the season where you have had more time of possession than your opponent. How big of a role did that play in this win, and how important do you consider that to be, or how necessary going forward?
So I'm gonna have trouble here. Tell me what the beginning of the question was again.
Yeah, this was the first game of the season where you have had more time of possession than your opponent.
Okay. I got
big of a role? You got it?
I missed the time of possession. I'm struggling today. I don't know why. You have an OC that really pays no attention to time of possession. I don't think that it's unimportant, but there's games where we're in that 27, 28, 29 mark and we scored 59. There's games where we've held the ball for 34 and 35 minutes and we scored a bunch of points. I don't know. I'm more concerned probably with turnovers. I think that correlates a lot more. I'm more concerned with explosives versus first downs. You want to be high in at least one of those. If you're not hitting the explosives, then you ought to be dinking and dunking underneath and running the football. And that usually means a higher number of first downs when you're moving the ball successfully. If you don't have a lot of first downs and you're scoring points, and that's where the explosives come in. But it's high to have both. We had some of them. We had that at UVA. We had a lot of first downs and a lot of explosives. We had that a lot last year. But one of them, we've got to be excelling at one of those. So those are the two that I look at the most. And then turnovers, and after that, it becomes more about the situational stuff. How do we do in the red zone? How are we on third down? How are we on short yardage and goal line? Time of possession, truthfully, I could lie and tell you it's vital in my mind, but I don't know how much it really correlates with winning and losing. I think if you hold the ball 24 minutes and you're not scoring, you're putting pressure on the defense. So we get that much, but to score fast, and the defense has to go back out on the field with 7 more points at their back is always a good problem to have.
Great. Thanks, Coach. Appreciate it.
Okay, y'all have a good week.